capabilities to be able to deliver munitions. We've seen it in terms of recent attacks against our interests, our personnel. Some of these systems are very small, low profile, low cost, very different than the hypersonic systems. It, to me, sometimes has an unnerving similarity to some of the rise of what we saw with IEDs during the 2000s in terms of just how prolific this could be, which obviously took a tragic toll on us. I wanted to ask you how you would grade and assess our current capabilities to identify and intercept these types of UAS aerial systems.
Well, as you know, there's a lot of different types of UAS systems. Small, little off-the-shelf stuff you can get on a Radio Shack, all the way up to very sophisticated MQ-9s that we have, for example. So, but one of the typical characteristics are they're relatively low and slow, and they can be intercepted. They can be intercepted through a hard shoot down with a kinetic action, or they can be intercepted through non-kinetics, like you break the electronic link between that and the control station. So a couple of different ways to do that. We have a wide variety of kind of UAS systems that are in the field today, many of them in Syria and Iraq and elsewhere. So it's an area for sure of concern. What it is, though, it's a subset of a much broader phenomena that's happening, which I would call a change in the fundamental character of war. And you're seeing the rapid introduction of robotics across the spectrum. The UAVs are just part of that. And very shortly, you're going to see the world's advanced militaries, United States, China, Russia, et cetera. You're going to see shifts to robotic systems in a big way, in land, sea, and air. So at some point in the future, you'll see maybe a third or more of the United States Navy or the Chinese Navy or the Russian Navy. Those will be unmanned maritime vessels, unmanned sub-vessels, and so on and so forth. So what you're seeing in
shift
UAVs
in that kind of direction
is a much broader shift to robotics in the conduct of war.
This is an area that I was very concerned about 2 years ago. As I saw this continue to develop, I asked our folks to take a hard look at making sure that we have the best capability to defend our troops in the inventory, and we do. It's not good enough, and we'll continue that work. But I also wanted the team to get upstream and go after the lines, the chains that enable this kind of activity, and we tasked our special operations forces to really bear down on this and pull together an interagency process, for lack of a better term, to go after this.
And just here, as I close here, the technology that you all are developing, I worry about the proliferation of this even into the civilian space, not just in terms of military targets. So your technology, your advancement there can help keep us safe everywhere here at the homeland as well. So thank you.
Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Gallagher, for 5 minutes.
Secretary Austin, one of your predecessors, Secretary Gates, described his greatest success as a, quote, war on the Pentagon that involved really cutting through the bureaucracy and spending $45 billion to develop and field the MRAP program, which was responsible for saving thousands of lives in Iraq. As you look at the problem we face across the Taiwan Strait, what do you see as your version of that? What is your version of the MRAP success? The thing that you are personally bird-dogging to ensure the bureaucracy is not slowing down our efforts to enhance deterrence across the Taiwan Strait?
Yeah, so in accordance with the Taiwan Relations Act, as you know, we are absolutely focused on making sure that Taiwan has what it needs to defend itself, the right kinds of capabilities. So pulling together what it takes to get those capabilities to Taiwan at relevant speed is the challenge. And you see us, and I think we may have talked to you about this the other day, pulling together a number of entities to work at this on this problem set. More work to be done for sure, but we're moving out. So.
But what is in simple terms that even I could understand, what would be sort of the thrust of that effort?
Well, you want on the one hand, there's always this focus on going after the big platforms, the shiny objects that are very attractive. But what does it really take to be able to defend yourself in the most effective fashion if you're a smaller nation? And we saw some of that we're seeing some of that in Ukraine. Things like cruise missile coastal defense capabilities. Defense against armor and those kinds of things. and the training that goes along with that. So, but that's what we're focused on, and we are making progress. But we'll move it up faster. So.
And I think there's a lot of bipartisan support for this idea of turning Taiwan into a porcupine. Can the members of this committee have confidence that the Secretary of Defense is personally engaged in that effort and pushing the Pentagon bureaucracy to deliver a deterrence by denial capability west of the international date line in the next 2 years?
Absolutely. There's not a week that goes by that I am not talking to commanders and staff on the problem set, the challenges that we face with China, and me personally. And so that is a part of our battle rhythm, for lack of a better term. And again, I think that's what it's going to take to do the kinds of things that you just described.
And do you think, would the appropriate metrics for us to look back on or just look at periodically to figure out how well we're doing and how well the building's doing? What you mentioned, coastal defense, cruise missiles, what are the things we should look at that we can actually count and measure over the next 2 years?
Well, I think in terms of their overall readiness, how their reserve forces are trained and their readiness levels, the kinds of training that the average kinds of capabilities that the average troop has, and things that units are able to do. I think there are readiness issues readiness indicators that we can point to directly to show that we are making progress. But those kinds of things that you just described, I think, are critical.
In the minute and 6 seconds I have left, I want to draw your attention to an article by John Pomfret and Matt Pottinger called Xi Jinping Says He's Preparing China for War, and talks about 4 speeches that Xi, the General Secretary of the Chinese Communist Party, the Supreme Leader of China, has given this month, which have as one of their major themes preparing the party and the country for war, including reducing food imports down to zero. They currently rely on the world for 40% of food imports, military mobilization offices across the country, combat casualty hospitals in the province closest to Taiwan. What do you make of this? Do you take Xi Jinping seriously when he says he's preparing his country for war?
We take Mr. Xi seriously. But I will say that I don't think that an attack on Taiwan is imminent nor inevitable. Having said that, we need to make sure that we maintain a combat credible force that can deter any adversary from making a bad decision on any given day.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now once again visits the great state of New Jersey. Ms. Sherrill's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do want to express my thanks as well to General Milley for his over 40 years of service. And as we know, when someone serves, their whole family serves. So I'd also like to express my sincere appreciation to your wife, Holly Ann, and your 2 children for their service. We do owe you and your family a huge debt of gratitude. So thank you very much. I would also like to enter into the record a letter led by Senator Shaheen with 37 of her colleagues, a letter to you, Secretary Austin, expressing their strong support for the department's personnel policy related to reproductive health care. So I'd like to associate myself with their sentiments and enter it into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. As we know, about 1 in 5 service members are women now. About 40% of them don't have access to full reproductive health services. So I'd certainly like to thank you, Secretary Austin, for your commitment to support for these women, for our service women and their families. I will tell you that we have seen in my own state women making decisions about job opportunities and where they may go for educational opportunities based on reproductive rights. So I do think this is an issue that impacts recruiting as well. And I'll say that in my own service, I served in Texas, a state where now women don't have access to basic reproductive services, basic services for even going through miscarriages right now, which has been devastating for so many families. So thank you for that. I would like to applaud your support for that. Unfortunately, as we have seen, a member of our Senate is now threatening to withhold nominations for flag ranks, and we know that I think over about 80 3- and 4-stars are being withheld, not to mention numerous commands where we see upcoming retirements or movements. Can you talk a little bit about the practical impact on readiness this will have for our forces?
Well, we spent the better part of the morning talking about the challenges that we face in this complex environment that we see currently. Without the leadership at the senior levels to help us maintain our readiness, I think this will place our readiness, our overall readiness, at risk, and it will also impact families in a major way. Permanent change of station moves won't happen. Kids will be won't enter school on time, and it goes on, and the problem will compound very quickly. And so I think it's important for those troops, those officers that have worked hard and earned those promotions to be able to move up to the next level and command or do whatever they're going to do. But we need their services at the appropriate level.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And then Secretary Austin and General Milley, as you may know, I now sit on the new Committee on Strategic Competition with the CCP, and I would echo Mr. Gallagher's remarks on the need for deterrence, and I appreciate your understanding and support for that as well. But we also have to confront now the CCP's stranglehold on the global rare earth mineral supply, their human rights abuses, the genocide against the Uyghurs and the impact that might have on our supply chains, the unpredictable COVID policies on the global supply chain. So can you both provide an update on how the department's working to ensure our supply chains in the Defense Department are not only resilient but sourced, extracted, processed, and manufactured in a way that is both robust enough for our defense needs but consistent with our democratic values?
Well, I want to thank Congress up front for your support of the CHIPS and Science Act that really, I think, will allow us to generate pretty significant capability eventually here at home in the United States. In this budget, we're asking you for $253 million to invest in critical minerals. You see $177 million that we're asking for casting and forging. $125 million to invest in battery technology and energy sources. So we are doing a lot to make sure that we have the requisite materials to continue to produce the weapons and munitions that we need to maintain our edge.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Secretary, you told Senator Schmidt yesterday that if the 8,000 plus service members who've been separated from the military due to the vaccine mandate want to reapply, that they're welcome to do so, but that you would do nothing to solicit their reapplication or to incentivize it. Why is that?
I think it's incumbent upon the individual to make that decision and reapply. The mechanisms are there.
Yeah, but why don't, I mean, you're overseeing a recruiting nightmare in our military right now. These are 8,000 patriots. And by the way, your department broke the law in administering the vaccine mandate. And that's not me saying so. That's the Inspector General for the Department of Defense who wrote on June 2nd of 2022, we found a trend of generalized assessments rather than the individualized assessment that is required by federal law.
The department did not break the law.
So the DOD, so wait, you mean the IG is wrong? You think the IG is wrong?
Mandate
he says he broke the law.
The lives of a number of
Well, it ruined the lives of a number of people too. and it ruined the lives of people who love our country and want to re-enlist. Let me ask you this question. If we direct you by force of law to re-engage and incentivize the re-enlistment of these folks with full back pay and rank, do you have the capability to follow that instruction?
You put provisions in the law to enable those people those former service members to reapply in accordance with the service.
Good. Well, we will do that just like we had to put the repeal of the vax mandate in the law. And I get the sense that the only reason you're not reaching out to these folks is pride, because otherwise they would be totally able to serve. And it seems that your personal pride is getting in the way. So going from the deeply serious things that we're not doing, re-engaging these 8,000 folks, to the deeply unserious things that we are doing, go ahead and put up the first slide. I guess my question is, how much taxpayer money should go to fund drag queen story hours on military bases?
You know, drag queen story hours is not something that the department funds.
Well, wait a second. That's actually not what the record seems to suggest. You were going to fund one at Ramstein Air Force Base. That one got canceled, but that's DOD insignia. That's a drag queen story hour for children. Then also at Malmstrom Air Force Base outside of Great Falls, Montana, you had a drag queen story hour for kids. At the Joint Base Langley Eustis, you put on a drag queen story hour on a Saturday for the first ever kid-friendly diversity, equity, inclusion summer festival. And at Nellis Air Force Base, you had the Drag You Nellis on June 17th. Who funded these things, Mr. Secretary?
Listen, drag shows are not something that the Department of Defense supports or funds. So.
But wait, why are they happening on military bases? I just showed you the evidence. Why are they happening?
I will say again, this is not something that we support or fund.
Well, so you think hosting a drag queen story hour on a military base isn't supporting the drag queen story hour?
I stand by what I just said.
But you may stand by it, but it's belied by the evidence over and over again. I mean, are you aware of the piece? Biden's military, Air Force Base in Montana holds drag show, drag queen story hour for kids in the Western Journal. Are you aware of that?
Again, I will say what I said before.
You're saying what you're saying, but I guess it just doesn't comport with the facts. General Milley, this will be my last time to question you. You mentioned 2 years ago that you wanted to better understand white rage. And so my question is this. Did you read this book?
No, not at all.
Well, it is What is White Privilege is the book, and it's actually written by a DOD official, a senior official in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and there are now hundreds of these books in dozens of schools, and I wonder if you guys connect this to your problems with recruiting.
I've never read it, never seen it. Frankly, I don't even think about that stuff. I think about
Go ahead and put up the next slide.
About the readiness of the force.
Go ahead and put up the next slide, please. Okay, well, in the next slide, this is a tweet by one of your employees in charge of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's patently racist. They say that she had to give Karen the business, that she talks about caudacity, presumably of Caucasian people. So I guess,
terrible.
Why does the... well, why is that person
You're not
so
getting
low?
an argument from me. That's terrible. It's wrong. She shouldn't be doing that, period.
Should she be fired?
That's a DOD employee, not U.S. military uniform.
Should they be fired, Secretary Austin?
Again, as you heard at your subcommittee here, this incident was investigated, and
they're still employed. Mr. Chairman, I have a series of unanimous consent requests since my time has expired.
Without objection.
First is Joint Base Langley Eustis holds drag show at kid-friendly festival. And the next is U.S. military defends drag show at largest training center as, quote, essential to morale. And the next is Nellis Air Force Base hosts first ever drag queen show, essential to morale and readiness. That's a Breitbart piece. And finally, Ramstein cancels library's drag queen story time for Pride Month following criticism.
Without objection. So ordered. Gentleman's time's expired.
Can I get copies of those? Because I'd like to take a look at those myself, actually. Take a look and find out what actually is going on there. Because that's the first I'm hearing about that kind of stuff. I don't read those news stories. I don't know what you're talking about. I'd like to take a look at those because I don't agree with those.
Well, they're now in the
those
official
things
record.
Shouldn't be happening. Period.
Thank you. Thank you for that admission.
Great.
I would like to point out, Chairman, that our students in Dodea schools scored the highest on the 8th graders and 4th graders scored the highest in math and reading in the country. So I want to thank all of our Dodea professionals who made that possible, and I encourage them to keep it up.
I hope you're not thanking that one.
Yeah. Gentleman's time's expired.